Welcome back, Michael Cohan, to Political Beatdown. The Brigaders missed you, Michael Cohan.
And I've missed
I
them.
missed you, Michael Cohan.
And I've missed you.
It is so great to have you here. Of course, you've been a little bit busy lately. We certainly understand that, but it's so great to have you back, Michael.
You know, Ben, I do really wish that I was on some sort of like a St. Bart's vacation or maybe to Australia, riding the waves and so on. But I was not. I was parked my ass over there and in the courthouse for the Manhattan District Attorney hush money trial. New York versus Donald J. Trump.
You weren't on the Alina Habba St. Bart style vacation with the individualized Dior. Where's my Dior bag, Cohen?
Oh,
Alina Habba gets her friends Dior bags. I want Dior, Gucci. Yeah. So
no swag for poor Ben.
I think I prefer my close friends to be champions of justice versus St. Bart's grifters. But it is what it is. It's great to have you back, Cohen. Welcome back, and I just wanted to have this special edition. You wanted to have this special edition to speak to the Beatdown Brigaders, to let them know how you're doing, and then we can talk a little bit more in detail. But the floor is yours, Michael Cohen.
So, how am I doing? Well, as I'm sure you could tell, I've lost even more weight. You know, I'm not one of the folks who are part of the, we'll call them stress eaters club. I'm the exact opposite. I find it very hard to eat or to digest food when I'm under intense stress. And you could only imagine this scenario, 21 hours on the stand with a meandering moron by the name of Todd Blanche, who I have now labeled a sloat, S-L-O-A-T, the stupidest lawyer of all time. There you go. He's a sloat, stupidest lawyer of all time. I mean, meandering questions, they made no sense. I mean, this guy got a D+ from, not just from me, I'm talking about from like everyone that, talked about his questioning. Think about it. The guy had, a year within which to develop the questions that he wanted to ask me. Instead, do you know that I had to correct him on 5 separate occasions, which opened the floor for me to be able to speak to the jury? I connected to the jury mostly because of his mistakes. And let me tell you something. Shame on Donald Trump for questioning the integrity and the honor of not, forget about just the judge. He could say whatever he wants. The judge is really a very strong guy. He's been down this road before. Shame on Donald for doing that anyway, because Judge Merchan is a gentleman. He is one of the most Solomonian type of judges that I've come across in a long, long time. And it's why I stayed off of social media. I stayed off social media because that's how I felt about the man, that I didn't want to disappoint him. It was a very weird thing for me because normally I generally don't care. But the fact that Trump and his acolytes, these assholes, felt that it's okay to attack the jury, the 12 and then the 6 alternates, claiming that they're all biased against him. They thought that they were going to play off of one potential juror. We know after 9 hours of deliberation over 2 days, they came back with a swift decision of guilt on all 31 counts. Let me just tell you this. There I am sitting in my den, and I'm just watching this, and my wife and my daughter came in. My son was at work. I had him on the phone. And when they read the first count as guilty, I knew that all 34 were going to be guilty as well, because generally they would start with the not guilty ones. And I'm saying to myself, whew, wow, 6 years I've been waiting for this man to be confronted with accountability. By the way, regardless of whether or not it was innocence or guilt, I would have felt the same. Though I do have to be honest and say I was very much relieved that the jury saw it the way I saw it, the way that we believe that the documentation, the documentary evidence, and the corroborating testimony all validate my narrative, the same narrative I've been talking about for 6 years, the same narrative that's in my book, Disloyal, the same narrative that's in my book, Revenge. I was extremely, extremely relieved that they saw it the same way that I see it, that truth has finally risen. As Buddha says, the three things that will always rise: the sun, the moon, and the truth. And boy, did they see it the right way.
21 hours of testimony. Take us through that, Michael Cohen. You also mentioned that it was some of Todd Blanche's missteps, some of Donald Trump's lawyers, Todd Blanche's missteps, that actually were moments where you were able to connect with the jury. Can you explain that?
Sure. So at one point in time, he starts talking about, and this is where Donald today, in that batshit crazy avalanche of broken brainword manure of a press conference that he held right there, right? That was my comment. Trump's press conference was nothing shy of a batshit crazy avalanche of broken brainword manure. Why? Because that's just what he is. What he was trying to talk about me is that, Michael Cohen had all of these other issues and that I used getting out of those issues in order to get a reduced sentence. What reduced sentence is he even talking about? He doesn't understand the system at all. Instead, he goes on these crazy lies, these rants. So Todd Blanche, using one of Trump's thoughts, was that Michael Cohen was involved in some sort of money, I don't even know how we call it, fraud in the taxi medallion industry. That's not accurate. At the time, I had 21 medallion corporations, all right, between New York and Chicago. And the whole taxi industry went into complete disarray as a result of ride sharing. What was once considered more valuable, and I'm talking about a medallion, a piece of aluminum that you put on top of the car to make it into a licensed medallion, was worth more than gold. Could you imagine? And it got decimated, despite the fact that the industry is obligated, the city of New York and the city of Chicago, by their own documents, are required to protect the value of the medallions. I mean, they did not. They gave away the medallion industry to ride sharing. Okay, most people don't give a shit about it. And I worked out a deal with the banks. I bought off my paper for a reduced price, but it had nothing to do with any of that. The fucking idiot doesn't even know what he's talking about. And so Todd Blanche starts, well, you're partners with Gene Friedman. No, sir. He goes, you're not partners with Gene Friedman? And he starts raising his voice. No, sir. She goes, wait, are you trying to tell me that you are not partners with Gene Friedman, who is a taxi industry? I'm like, no, sir. Would you like me to explain? And he goes, yeah. So I look over to the jury sitting there. They're all to my left. And I said, okay, let me explain. Gene Friedman is a licensed New York City taxi medallion agent. I own medallions. I lease them to him, no different than you lease an apartment from a landowner, from a real estate company. Just because you are leasing an apartment from the landlord does not make you the landlord's partner. Plain and simple. It just doesn't make you the landlord's partner. Gene Friedman, on each and every one of the medallions, paid me a sum certain each and every month. It was the same amount each and every month based upon a contract, like a lease agreement. So therefore, whether if he makes profit at the end of the month over and above what he pays me, God bless. I wish best. If he loses money at the end of the month, I don't give a shit. It has no effect upon me. I get my sum certain. It's no different than hypothetically if you're a tenant. You don't pay based upon how many days you stay in the apartment. You pay for the month. And it's the same concept. So he's like, okay, moving on. You know, it's because he had 5 pages worth of questions. Gene Friedman was a bad guy. He wasn't always a bad guy. In fact, Gene Friedman, okay, moving on. You know, it's because he had 5 pages worth of questions. Gene Friedman was a bad guy. He wasn't always a bad guy. In fact, Gene Friedman at one point in time was the largest medallion owner in America's history. Imagine that. He was the largest fleet operator in United States history. He had fleets in New York, Chicago, Boston, Philadelphia. He was all over the place. He had like almost 2,000 medallions under management. He was enormous. His cash flow was like, I don't know, like $500,000 a day, $1 million a day. It was enormous. But then when the whole industry went upside down because of rideshare, he lost everything. And he ended up screwing over just about everyone in the industry, including the city and state of New York. He stole MTA taxes. He stole TIF, which is Taxi Infrastructure Fund tax, which is comparable to, like, you know, when you go to the gas station and you fill up the gas, there's a tax that goes to city and state that goes for the roads. It's the same thing in the taxi industry. And the operator, meaning Gene, the agent, collected that money from each of the drivers and was supposed to send it to the state and the city, but instead he kept it for himself. And he used that in order to get off of this $30 million theft by lying about me to the Southern District of New York in a 302s. So that's where I got Todd Blanche, for example, in a lie. But I got to tell my story. And I told my story the same way that I would tell it if I wasn't on this podcast, where I'm just explaining it. And they were like, that's another D+ for this guy. Yeah, possibly right question, but wrong question. It didn't get us anywhere, and it certainly doesn't impugn Michael Cohen's credibility. And this stupid moron, this Blanche idiot that he is, did it again. And he did it with a different question and a different issue. And then he did it again. And then again. And each time I had to correct him. Like, for example, the whole issue about me wanting a position in the White House. And I tried to explain to him, no, sir, you've heard me talk about this with the prosecutors. I don't care what anybody in the White House. And I tried to explain to him, no, sir, you've heard me talk about this with the prosecutors. I don't care what anybody else said. Yeah, it would have been nice to have been considered, only because it would have helped to further what I wanted, which was clients based upon being the personal attorney to the president. It was a hybrid, something I talked about with my daughter by text message, and we read the text messages, but he didn't even take that into consideration properly. And he asked just stupid questions. And so when he did that, he opened up the door for me to speak to the jury, to connect to the jury. And the same way that I'm connecting with you, my political beatdown brigader community, is how I felt that I connected to the jurors. They were like, wow, interesting. And when I got a chance to really talk about the fact that I've never refuted the fact that the underlying narrative, the underlying facts of the charges were accurate. I never disputed that. There was an error in the tax. However, I, to this day, as I said back then, do not believe that I should have been criminally prosecuted. Why? Well, what happens if there's a mistake on your tax return? Well, You get a letter from the IRS that says, hey, Mr. Cohen, after review of your 2012, 13, 14, 15, 16 tax returns, there appears to be a discrepancy. Please, with your attorney or CPA, or by yourself, please reach out to the undersigned agent to set up a meeting to discuss. I never got that letter. I never had an agent assigned. I never had an opportunity to resolve the issue. Mine went from an allegation on August, it was like the August 17th. It went from August 17th from an allegation to you need to plead guilty on Monday to these 5 counts of tax evasion over filing an 80-page indictment that includes your wife because the hush money payments went into her personal account because I was the subject of identity theft, and also because she's a co-signer to our tax return we filed jointly. And I wasn't going to put my wife, my family in harm's way. I said, fine, fuck it. And I never thought that the judge would give me 36 months. I knew that he was smarter than that. Duke undergrad, Duke Law School. This guy wasn't a fucking moron. Well, he allowed the prosecutors, the Southern District of New York, to do just that. So when I told the story, much calmer than I am right now, all of a sudden, they're like, what? I can see the expression. And when I talk about the harm that this has done to my family, the pain that this has inflicted, that Donald J. fucking Trump, Von fucking Shitsenpants, let's all say it together, Von Shitsenpants. Everybody just start Von Shitsenpants. When I told them the story, I saw 2 of the jurors had tears in their eyes. I had a wonderful life. Wonderful life. And all of a sudden, because Von Shitsenpants can't keep his mushroom pecker in his pants, my family's happiness becomes up for grabs, to be destroyed, my soul. That's who they are. They're my soul, my wife, my daughter, my son. That all of a sudden, we should lose everything while he becomes president of the United States of America, thinking how he could grift off this country, sell our nation's secrets? No.
Michael Cohen, the cross-exam of you famously began as such. It started with this. Here's how the cross-exam of Michael Cohen began. Trump's lawyer, Todd Blanche. Mr. Cohen, my name is Todd Blanche, and you and I have never met. You went on TikTok and called me a crying little shit. And then your response was, that sounds like something I would say. Objection, sustained. And then he proceeded to ask a number of questions like that. And your response was, that sounds like something I could have said. It seemed to be very ineffective, very amateurish by Trump's lawyer. Walk us through that. What was going through your mind? How would you characterize what was going on in the courtroom when that was happening?
So you can only imagine. Right out of the gate, this guy comes at me. He wants to, attack me for calling him a crying little shit, a whiny little shit, whatever it was. And it sounds like something I would say. And what happened is, then there was a little sidebar. Obviously, prosecutors objected. They objected. They said, this isn't about you. So, what are you doing? And the judge, of course, sustained it, and then he had to move on. But then they turned around and he started then talking about my disdain for Donald Trump. He goes, Mr. Cohen, you hate Donald Trump, don't you? Yes, sir. And why am I going to quibble about it? I absolutely do. And by the way, who wouldn't? Right? After everything that he's done, from having me placed into solitary confinement, 51 days there, for throwing me under the bus for his dirty deeds, how could I not? And so they fully understood it, and that was that.
Then there was a moment, Cohen, where they showed you some of the merch on store.meidastouch.com. At first, they tried to act like store.meidastouch.com was your store when it was our store. And then they showed you one of the items that were being sold on it, which now has become an exhibit in the criminal trial against Donald Trump, which resulted in 34 felony count convictions. But there's the shirt, the famous now Mar-a-Lago Correctional Facility shirt, the official shirt of the Mea Culpa podcast. That's sold on store.meidastouch.com. But then they showed you a number of other items that were all of the Meidas Touch items and not the Mea Culpa podcast items. I want to remind everybody, though, you can go to store.meidastouch.com now. You can actually get the Mar-a-Lago Correctional Facility shirts, which are now an exhibit, not because Cohen wanted it to be an exhibit, but because Donald Trump's lawyer made that an exhibit, the same way Donald Trump's lawyer made Von Shitsenpants into the official record of the court. But there it is at store.meidastouch.com. But walk us through that moment as well. It must have been surreal. They're showing you, like, they're not even talking about the
trying
case.
To figure out. This is the problem also being a lawyer when you're on the stand. It's the same as when you're being deposed. You're trying to presume that the guy who's asking you the question or the lawyer who's asking you the question has half a fucking clue what they're doing, what they're talking about, and they don't. And you're trying to figure out, is there some sort of backdoor or some sort of gotcha that this guy is trying to put on you? Got to constantly keep your head focused. Don't quibble. Don't argue. Don't fight with it. If you did it, just own it. And I've been owning my mistakes for a very long time. So he goes, did you call Donald J. Trump Von Shitsenpants? Yes, sir. No. Is that your shirt? Yes, sir. You hate Donald Trump? Yes, sir. Okay. Where's he going with this? And that's what the jury felt. There's a lot of questions there. I mean, 21 hours worth of questions between the prosecutors and, of course, defense counsel. The direct and cross-examination. 21 hours. Now, the prosecutors laid this out beautifully. They talked about documents. They talked about text messages, emails. They talked about recordings. And then this clown gets up there and he starts, in August of 2017, I'm like, oh my God, I got to try to think of what took place in August. Oh yeah, that's when, I sent the letter to my lawyer in order to tell the Southern District of New York. Then he goes to 2019, then 2018, then 2020, and then he's bouncing all around and trying to keep track of this meandering sort of style of questioning was exhausting, to say the least. Exhausting.
Then I would be remiss, Cohen, if I didn't ask you about this moment in the 21 hours of testimony where Todd Blanche yelled at you and he was like, you lie. And there was a phone call in October that could have been about multiple topics. And then the media ran with that and was like, oh my God, there was a Perry Mason moment. Meanwhile, there was an objection. The objection was sustained. And everybody who I knew in the courtroom was saying that was not a significant moment, at all. It didn't even make a dent. But
when you turned on CNN or MSNBC, whether it was Ellie Honig or Ari Melber on MS, they were pushing this narrative.
Let me just jump to those idiots for a quick second before you finish your question. There's something very wrong with Ellie Honig, to be honest with you. There's something really fundamentally fucked up with this guy. I used to actually say, oh yeah, he's a friend of mine, to the extent that, we would speak to each other. He's on my podcast like 7-8 times. He's trying to be just like Ari Melber. They're trying to be contrarians. They're trying to show, we don't really sort of play this one side. Well, there's only one side to truth. There's only one side to being right. All right. It's not like Donald when he said, when he was talking about the Nazis in Charlottesville marching, well, there's good people on both sides. No, there's not. All right. It's the same thing. Melber's an idiot. So is Ellie Honig. By the way, how do you know that Ellie Honig is an idiot? How do you know that he's wrong? Because Donald Trump was held accountable and guilty on 34 counts. Despite all of Honig said, I wouldn't be shocked if it's an acquittal. He goes, I never liked this case at all. They never should have brought it. It's a weak case. And you really aren't going to be able to put the misdemeanor into the federal crime. I've never heard of anything like that. That's because he was a shit lawyer all along. All right. It's why his entire gig is predicated on CNN, which, by the way, has gotten decimated in their ratings simply because they're trying to be in their right of center. They think that they're going to steal Fox News's, listeners for whatever the reason is, whoever the new guy is that's over there. What CNN should do, they should beg. They should run to Jeff Zucker, the former president of CNN, when they were making a lot of money and they were doing well. They should run to him on their knees with $1 billion offer and say, if you become president, we'll give you $1 billion. All right, we'll buy you for the next 10 years for $1 billion. Make it like a baseball contract or a Tiger Woods type contract, because whoever it is that's running CNN right now, running it into the fucking ground. Do you realize, Ben, our podcast right now has higher ratings, higher viewership than CNN. And why? For good reason. For good reason. When you get a fucking joke like Ellie Honig sitting there, I don't understand this, and then you get a 34 guilty verdict, somewhere along the line, you fucking putz, you got it wrong. You got it wrong. You don't know what you're talking about.
And then they don't admit that they got it wrong.
Doing the same shit. And by the way,
they don't admit they got it wrong.
What the fuck is with CNN? They got it all wrong. What's with CNN? You put on Ty Cobb, that fucking jerk off with the Raleigh fingers mustache. Then you end up with the other idiot that comes on there, Bill Barr. And so for what reason? What reason could anybody who is center and left want to hear from Bill Barr? The only thing I want to see Bill Barr's fat ass is sitting in front of a congressional hearing explaining exactly what Donald Trump told him that he needs to do to be his fixer in the administration. I want to know exactly what Donald Trump told him to do in regard to me when they refused to let me out of solitary and kept me for the first 36 days. And then the second time when they did for another 15 days, 51 days, thanks to Bill Barr. I want to know things like that. I want to know what Bill Barr knew and what he was doing at Donald Trump's direction, because everybody knows that Bill Barr didn't do anything without being directed. Nobody did anything there without being directed by Trump.
Cohen, it must be cathartic, though, to have your own show like Political Beatdown and Mea Culpa, so you can bring this information to the people directly, right? We see what happens when there are these filters who are trying to both sides the issue, but with Political Beatdown, with Mea Culpa, you have a platform to speak for a half hour, an hour, however long you want, an hour and 20 minutes, 2 hours, and tell people the truth, what happened. Have your thoughts not just in sound bites, but actually, speak to people from your heart. And the fact that people can see you here on Political Beatdown, it's such an honor to co-host this week. I want to remind people about patreon.com/political beatdown, right? patreon.com/political beatdown. And it's one of the ways
help fund this show. Other ways are pro-democracy sponsors, right? One of the other ways is this Patreon and the emojis that you see as well. But you're going to hold an exclusive Zoom meeting. So if all the brigaders want to meet you, right, they can join patreon.com/political beatdown.
Tuesday night.
We're going to do it early next week. You and I, we'll give you a little bit of rest this weekend, Cohen, but then we'll set a special Zoom. We'll send the secret link on patreon.com/political beatdown. Look, we don't have outside investors at the Meidas Touch Network and on Political Beatdown. And so one of the ways we help grow this platform is through you. And I hope you've seen the way we've grown this platform. We were the most watched digital platform for the Trump criminal trial, thanks to all of you. So again, if you want to help support this show, patreon.com/political beatdown, and you'll be able to meet Michael Cohen next week. We'll drop that secret link this weekend. Cohen, I just want to get your thoughts overall, though. 21 hours. What kind of reflections do you have right now?
It's bad. You know, it's like the PTSD. I'm really trying very hard to put all of that, this stress, the anxiety that is associated with, number one, being a witness, especially when you're being attacked by these Republican members of Congress. Could you imagine MAGA Mike Johnson, that fucking dirtbag who thinks that women should go back to the 14th century? The fact that he believes that America should be a white Christian nationalist country. This guy is out there talking smack about me, J.D. Vance, that fucking jerk-off Vivek Ramaswamy with his laminates. You imagine this horse shit? Over the 4 days that I was there was over 20 members of Congress. You had Lauren Boebert. I was going to ask her to, come sit on my lap while I was on the stand, and we could pretend that we're at Beetlejuice. I mean, there's so many things I wanted to do and say, but I had to control myself because it was the wrong environment for it. Like here, this is the right environment for it. There, out of respect to Judge Merchan and to the jurors, wasn't going to step not an inch out of line. But you had over 20 members of Congress, 20, came there, and each and every time there was a break, they go running out to the cameras in order to talk shit about me because Donald was gagged in terms of mentioning my name. I was a witness. I am a non-party subpoenaed witness, plain and simple. And the protection, at least I got some protection that way, thanks to Judge Merchan and the prosecutors for having this gag order placed on Donald, which of course he violated anyway. But, instead, he just got members of Congress to dress up like him. Could you imagine this? It's like, think about it. It's like The Handmaid's Tale. They're all dressing the same. They're all trying out for some, secondary role like VP or chief of staff or whatever the hell that they want. Going out there and talking shit about me all day. So you know what we do? You know what we do here on the Beatdown? You know what we do here as brigaders? What we do is we flood his Untruth Social. We go ahead and we go onto Twitter, hashtag Von Schitzenpants. VON, capital SHITZ, capital INPA, capital PANTZ. And Von Schitzenpants. Two finger to salute to you, motherfucker. Enjoy your 34 counts of guilt. And know that in another 4 weeks, or I should say it's really 5 weeks, July 11th, you're going in for sentencing. All right? And I hope every single day you think about all the shit that you pulled, all the stuff that you said about Judge Merchan, all the things you said about Judge Merchan's daughter, the things you said about the jurors, the things you said about the witnesses, the things you've said about me. I hope you take into consideration that, you know who's taking that into consideration? Judge Juan Merchan. That's who. So just know, July 11th, not going to be a good day for you, pal.
I think everybody knows the proper spelling of Von Schitzenpants in case y'all wanted to know
Hashtag Von Schitzenpants.
The hashtag right there. Patreon.com/political beatdown. Michael Cohen will be doing the exclusive Zoom meeting with you if you become a member of our Patreon. Patreon.com/political beatdown. Join that right now. Also, go to store.meidastouch.com and get the gear that Donald Trump made into an exhibit. It's Donald Trump who made this into an exhibit. The Mar-a-Lardo Correctional Facility gear at store.meidastouch.com. Michael Cohen, thanks for speaking to the Brigaders. Everybody also make sure you subscribe to.
Remember, mea culpa. Everyone, please subscribe. Listen to it. We have a couple really great new guests coming on.
Michael Cohen, great to see you back. Welcome back, Michael Cohen. And now Political Beatdown will resume as always with Michael Cohen. Want to give a special thanks to Dina Dahl, who did an incredible job filling in. We're going to do a show with Dina Dahl as well that we're working on now, because I know everybody wants to see Dina get her own show, as do I, as do others at the Meidas Touch Network. Cohen, great seeing you. Great seeing you all, Brigaders. Join patreon.com/political beatdown now. Go to store.meidastouch.com. Subscribe to Mea Culpa and Political Beatdown and Audio. Subscribe to the Meidas Touch YouTube channel. Have a wonderful day. Have a wonderful weekend when justice prevailed. Shout out to the Brigaders. Shout out to the Meidas Mighty.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special edition of Mistrial, our new podcast with my fabulous co-hosts, Karen Agnifilo and Kathleen Rice. And we have a guest today, our guest of honor, Michael Cohen, who is a friend and a longtime client of mine. We may talk about our journey together over the course of this podcast. As a testament to their commitment, Kathleen and Karen, as you can probably tell, are both in transit, one on a train, one in the back of a car, but wanted to be here today. Hopefully video and audio will keep. But given that Karen's freezing up every once in a while, I'll kind of lead a little bit and guide the conversation with Michael. So Michael, I think that the first question is, how are you feeling? What has the last day been like for you? Give us just open us up into your world.
I'm actually very tired. I did MSNBC last night with you, Danya. Always, of course, you're stealing the show because you're brilliant and fantastic. And then this morning I did Good Morning America. So physically I'm tired, but really more like mentally and emotionally, I really am. This has been a very long journey. I mean, this is a 6-year journey for me. And so, I'm really kind of tired, emotionally, physically, and mentally tired.
Yeah. So I've known you for the past 4 of the 6 years. And we first met when you were in solitary confinement. So we met virtually. Your wife, Laura, who is absolutely wonderful, such a stalwart, had found me and reached out to me and asked me to advocate on your behalf after you had been unconstitutionally remanded to prison for the audacity of writing a tell-all book about your former boss and then President Donald Trump. And in violation of your First Amendments, you were thrown into prison. And so we filed an emergency application and a habeas petition to get you out. But I've been a lawyer for over 25 years now as a federal prosecutor, state prosecutor, defense lawyer, in-house lawyer, everywhere. And I always invested in my clients. I had never met anyone in the kind of, in the predicament I don't even have a word for what you were going through at that time. It was, you recall, you were first thrown into lockup in shackles, in freezing conditions, and then you were transferred to Otisville. I remember that first weekend, it was well over 100 degrees in your cell with no ventilation. It was just...
And let's not forget, and a broken window where at nighttime when it would rain in on me and the flies would come in. The toilet was broken. The cell that they put me in was absolutely horrific living condition, if you could even call it living condition at all. But I don't think you get enough credit, to be honest with you, Danya, on that writ of habeas corpus that you filed on my behalf, whereby Judge Alvin K. Hellerstein, in one of the most incredible decisions I think I've ever seen or even ever heard of, where he turns around and he claims that this is retaliation by the president of the United States of America by and through a willing and complicit Attorney General Bill Barr, weaponizing the Justice Department to retaliate against a critic. I mean, it's mind-boggling to me. I mean, this is actually taught in a couple of law schools where how is something like this even possible? So when we listen to Donald talk about the Biden administration weaponizing the Justice Department against him, what he's really doing is projecting, because he knows exactly what he did to me. And so he thinks that everyone is as complicit and guilty and corrupt as he is. And so he's projecting what he did to me onto himself, which is complete nonsense.
It truly was. I mean, the conditions obviously were deplorable, but more than that, there was a sense of, how is this happening? How is this happening in America? You've described yourself as a political prisoner, and that's what it was. So thank goodness we were able to get swift justice and get you out.
Well,
and
swift
then,
to some people. It's swift in the eyes of the law, not 16 additional days. You know, I did 51 days in total of solitary confinement. The first time, which was also another action by Trump using the weaponization of the Justice Department. You know, what they did is I was supposed to be released on day 14. You know, they were holding everybody that, you know, was subject to comorbidities due to COVID for 14 days, which was, you know, pursuant to the CARES Act for the incubation period. On day 13, as I watched 8 other fellow inmates who were supposed to be released at the same time, speaking and reaching out, because I could see them through the door, reaching out to their family to pick them up the following day. Instead, I got one of the members of the prison come to me and say, "You're not leaving tomorrow." I said, "Well, why not?" "Well, your file was pulled by Washington for review." I said, "What are you talking about?" You know, I mean, I have significant comorbidities. I blew a series of pulmonary embolists that almost ended my life. And if you catch COVID, when you have that sort of blood clotting issues and embolisms, it's a death sentence. They're like, "Well, it's not up for discussion or debate." I said, "Well, how long?" They said, "I don't know." It was another 3 weeks. I did 35 days in solitary confinement, again, in these horrible, horrible conditions, until I was ultimately released. And then several weeks later, right, under a lie, they end up remanding me back because I refused to sign, as you described it, that counterfeit fraudulent document that just doesn't even exist in the system. And that's what, you know, we're going to the Supreme Court on this case. July 10th, the day before Trump's sentencing, there is a hearing before Judge Sotomayor on a writ of certiorari.
so that was, to segue a little bit, that was, and there's some poetic justice to that timing, I think, but the pressure that you were under then was horrific. But it may compare to the kind of pressure that you've been under the past couple weeks. Just the stress of the moment and the impactfulness, and also, of course, the vitriol and the intimidation of the threats that I saw being leveled at you is, I think it's just unimaginable to people who aren't up close. I saw it up close, and even just, you know, derivatively, I felt it. So I think that people don't understand or appreciate the kind of courage, really, and dedication that it took for you to be there in that moment and to withstand that kind of pressure and scrutiny, not just, you know, from Trump supporters, but from the public and from the media. And I think we just lost Karen, but I was gonna turn, Michael, to your experience having been the subject of that kind of scrutiny and criticism that was leveled at you, of course, in the 6 years before the trial, but during the trial, and not just from the defense, but from the media. What was
I'll
that
tell you,
experience?
what's it like? It's horrific, but I'll tell you, the 51 days of solitary confinement, it shreds your soul. You kind of die on the inside, and you realize when you live in your own head, getting through that is so tough that nothing else seems to be able to affect you. Now, you saw the anxiety that I was dealing with, but that anxiety was different than the anxiety that I felt when I was in the solitary confinement situation. It's more that I didn't want to make mistakes, and there's so much material, whether it's from my podcasts or whether it's from my TV appearances or any of the statements that I made. I mean, they had a plethora. I mean, I've done over 400 episodes just on Mea Culpa alone, over 100 plus on Politacl Beat Down. I have my 2 books, Disloyal Revenge. There's thousands and thousands of pages that they could have gone in. I didn't want the prosecutors. I almost felt like obligated to Susan Offinger and to and to the rest of the team, Josh Steinglass, and just the whole group of prosecutors who had worked so hard on trying to organize this case. I didn't want to make any mistakes. Like yourselves, all 3 of you, perfectionists. And that's why you're so great at what it is that you do, Danya. You guys are, you're perfectionists. So I know that none of you wanted to, let your clients, I don't want to let anybody down. So that imposing of my own, desires for perfection really creates an anxiety where you don't sleep. I'm not a stress eater. I'm actually the opposite. I've lost 30 pounds since all this started. I'm the same weight I was when I graduated high school. That's the only, I guess maybe it's an advantage, a disadvantage, I don't know. But that pressure is it's crazy. You saw as I would be just walking back and forth in circles, almost like a crazy man, until I finally sat in that witness chair. And then, once the questions start coming, and again, for me, the information was not difficult because I've been saying the same story for 6 years. I've been telling the same narrative for 6 years.
Yeah, Karen, I think we have you back, and I know you. Are you? Yeah. Did you want to jump in and talk about the DA's office strategy, the defense strategy, or you, Kathleen?
Yeah, look, you're a lawyer, and what do you think about the defense strategy here?
Yeah, I would call it piss poor. I was trying to behave myself last night when I was on the MSNBC panel with Danya, and I would say that Todd Blanche, how they came up with that acronym for me of GLOAT? I said that Todd Blanche is SLOAT, SLOAT, the stupidest lawyer of all time. I have never seen a worse defense for a former president where everything is on the line. Look, they allowed Donald to dictate, for example, in the New York AG case, they allowed him to dictate the terms of how they were going to handle the defense of that case using Alina Habba. Again, massive mistake. And by doing that, he lost $500 million. Well, now, and Todd Blanche, foolishly yesterday, I think it was on Fox News, turned around and said that Donald Trump was fully responsible for the defense strategy of that case. What criminal defense lawyer worth anything is going to allow the client to dictate to any of you how you're going to strategize a defense that's necessary for this type of a case. And that's why, now look, the facts are the facts, the documents were the documents, the testimony of the 20 prosecutorial witnesses were going to always be their statements. But you still want to have a defense which isn't about, let's try to destroy Michael Cohen's credibility, thinking that that's the defense in order to win this type of a case. And here's what the jurors obviously felt. It's a stupid defense, bad move. Michael Cohen's credibility, just like in the Engoron case, was confirmed, and Donald Trump lost 34 out of the 34 counts. Guilty.
Michael, if I can just, Danya, if I can just jump in. Michael, I have to say that I think that what you were able to show the jury is that you are, by your own admission, a very flawed person. But I will say that I was so bothered by the fact that during this trial, a bunch of my former colleagues, who all dressed like Donald Trump, showed up at the courthouse and said terrible things about you and the judge and the whole process, knowing that there was nothing rigged about it. I think that, a lot of people out there are probably wondering, knowing how bad it was going to get for you, having been in jail, having been treated the way that you were treated, admitting that you had done things wrong. What made you say, I'm still going to put myself out there and do the right thing in this case? Because you did do the right thing. And there was a small universe of people who have had the bravery to take Donald Trump on, E. Jean Carroll, and others. But you certainly fall into that category. Maybe just, enlighten us as to how you made that decision.
July 1st of 2018, I did an interview with George Stephanopoulos where I said that my wife, my daughter, my son, and my country have my first loyalty and always will. And it was at that moment, it was the night before, when my children asked me, Michael, for real? Where's your loyalty? Isn't it to us? Enough of this guy. It's just enough. And it was the realization, and I woke up. And after I made that statement to Stephanopoulos, I made it my commitment, as hard as it is, my commitment is to tell the truth and to ensure accountability, because our country's democracy, the future of my children, and God willing, one day grandchildren and great-grandchildren, I hope I live long enough to see that. My hope is that I would leave this world knowing that this country is better then than it is today, and it's not. We're losing precious freedoms. The fact that my daughter has less rights than my grandmother is something that I'm just willing to take on that fight. I know it sounds, it sounds lofty and so on, but it is legitimately how I feel about it. And I brushed aside the stupidity of MAGA Mike Johnson, right? Who is all but happy to see a woman lose reproductive rights, or J.D. Vance, or the Vivek Ramaswamy, or any of these other congressional idiots that I've had to deal with in the 7 different congressional hearings that I testified before. See, most people don't know, I didn't just testify before 1 congressional hearing, 7 different congressional hearings, and 50%, give or take, are decent to you. They thank you for coming. They ask you relevant questions. And then the other half, I'm referring to the GOP, say the stupidest things. Liar, liar, pants on fire. Do you remember I said to Mark Meadows, that moron? Do you remember I said to him, I know what you're doing. And I know the play that you're running, because I'm the one that wrote that play. I'm the one who wrote Trump's playbook. So you're not going to run that play on me. And look at what's happening to me. In a few weeks from now, I was going to prison. You don't want to be in my seat, so knock it off. Did he listen? No. Now look at him. He's an indicted co-conspirator. He's an idiot.
Well, you made a very good point. And I do want to just also say that I should add Stormy Daniels to that list of people who have been brave enough to take on Donald Trump as well.
Oh, no arguments from me on that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you that.
Michael, one thing I think is so extraordinary about that moment, that moment of inflection in the summer of 2018, when you decided to turn away from the Trump camp or cult, as you I think appropriately put it, was I didn't even realize it until Bob Costello took the stand, the amount of pressure that you were under, that sneaky campaign, that backdoor campaign to try and keep you in the fold, and him, your own lawyer, the person that you should be able to trust.
He wasn't my lawyer, right? He was never my lawyer.
Well,
but
he was trying to be your lawyer, and he, you had a privilege with him, and he's running around behind your back, calling you a drama queen because you're going through the worst moment of your life, calling you an asshole, and trying to keep you close to the Trump people, and that you had that come to Jesus moment with yourself and your family, and you said no. That would have been the easier road, but instead you took this one. And I think people, I've now seen it for 4 years. It's just astonishing what you've had to go through.
Idea. People have no idea the fact that the easier road for me would have been to keep my mouth shut. You know, there are a couple of guys that were with me in Otisville that used to say this all the time: knock it off. If you shut your mouth and you apologize to Donald, you will be the first one that he pardons. And then on top of that, not only would you get a pardon, but then you'd end up probably over at Fox News, or you'd end up at Newsmax or OAN or running the RNC, right? Don't forget, I raised a ton of money from when I was the vice chair of the RNC Finance Committee. I'd be over at the RNC, sort of, money that you'd be making dealing with all these mega billionaire Wall Street guys now that have decided for their own pocketbooks to back Donald. But I said, no, it's not about Donald. It's not about that. It's about our democracy, stupids. That's what I would say to them. Don't you understand? Democracy is not a constitutional right. It's not a God-given right. It's an experiment. It's the greatest experiment in the history of the world. And after 259 years, we're actually in a position, something that our founding fathers were afraid of, that no foreign country would ever destroy our democracy, ever. But it could be destroyed from within when you have a president who wants to be more than a president, wants to be a dictator, a monarch, a Führer, just an autocrat. And that's what they were always fearful of. But for whatever the reason may be, no other president has ever wanted to do that until Donald.
Michael, I want to just say that I know you are mindful of your time. I know you have to get off in 2 minutes, but you, I have to say, have done such an amazing job at redeeming yourself for anything that you've done in your past. Honestly, I just really want to thank you for your service to this country, because that's what you've done. It couldn't have been easy. It couldn't have been easy to have. Look, our worlds are so close in the sense that we both are on the Meidas Touch Network. I obviously work with Danya and Kathleen, yet I've never spoken to you. And I've made it, I don't speak to my friends at the DA's office. I wanted to keep myself completely just neutral in this matter. And it could not have been easy hearing people like me comment about you. And I just want to I want you to hear from me how grateful and thankful I am to you for your sacrifice, and apologize if there's anything I did to make your life in any way difficult. But truly, your sacrifice is recognized, it's appreciated, and I just personally wanted to thank you for all that you've done for this country.
Well, I appreciate that. Let me say something which may shock you. I appreciate the three of you, specifically, obviously, Danya. Right? I mean, if it wasn't for Danya, I probably would have died in Otisville, to be very honest with you. And I was prepared for that. But with both of, with all of your voices, I always, the expression that, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I also believe that it takes a community in order to protect democracy. And Meidas Touch Network and having the three of you on, expressing as intelligently and as cohesively as you do, the importance of the things that are taking place right now so that we can expand this community together to ensure that come November, that more people understand whether Republican, Democrat, Independent, it makes no difference. They have to understand that the future of America is on the line, and the future of America and America's democracy is more important than any one individual person. So, the three of you also play a very important role in where we're at today, why Donald Trump was held accountable for, these 34. And look, have there been a lot of things, said about me? Absolutely. Are they mean? Absolutely. Do they hurt? Sure. Do you get over it? Absolutely. I mean, today, Trump held a press conference. It was almost as meandering and wandering as Todd Blanche's questioning on cross-examination, which bounced all over the place. But I put out this response because he attacked me again. He can't mention my name, can't do it, right? And he just goes on and on. So I issued a statement, right? Trump's press conference was nothing shy of a batshit crazy avalanche of broken brain word manure, because that's what it's become. I mean, it's the same rambling stupidity that when he was in the cage outside of, outside the courtroom, and he would do the same thing every day. Does he not understand that he's just rambling on and on and on, and that people are even walking away from his rallies because it's like, yeah, we've heard all of your grievances and gripes. Now, what are you going to do for America? And to bring that home to the three of you, you guys create, again, this community of your followers and so on. And the sole purpose that I see for all of us doing what we do is to ensure that come November, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are reelected to president and vice president of the United States. Because then and only then do I think that people will start to wake up and say, listen, this guy lost 2020. They've lost 2022. All the midterms, all of the special elections have all gone Democrat. There's got to be a reason. And what is the reason? It's Donald J. Trump.
Agree with you. The press conference this morning maddened me so much for so many reasons. I don't mind people in this country having legitimate disagreements about issues, right? But when you just flat out lie, that's where I have an issue. And Donald Trump just lies. For example, I just want to say, he said, why isn't Alvin Bragg prosecuting real crime? The city has never seen crime like this before. Murders in New York City since Alvin Bragg became DA are down 27%. Shootings are down 45%. So I just want to say that because it drives me crazy, just the lies that he spreads. But I am mindful of your time. We have to let you go. And I just really am so grateful. And thank you so much for being on this brand new show that I am so thrilled to be co-hosts with Danya and Kathleen with.
Yeah, well, thank you to the three of you as well. And we will see each other now when I'm in the office. Karen, now we could talk to one another. And Jennifer, I hope to see you soon.
Now we can say
Danya,
hi. Yes.
Danya, I speak to every single day.